Hello, my name is Vincent Bizone, and welcome to this Delta Dynamics video, How to Organize and Manage a Job Shop. This is part 3, Insights, Concepts, and Tools that you can use to manage your shop more effectively. The first thing I want to show you is a tool that I call closing the loop, for closing the loop. And what closing the loop means is that in many shops, when an order is completed, it's forgotten about. There's not a postmortem, there's no kind of review of it or whatever, and there should be, because that's a valuable source of information in terms of how well the organization performed in getting that order out. So you can see in this tool that you've got the order number, you've got the amount that was quoted, you got the actual cost, and then you got the question, was it shipped on time or not? So if any of those metrics, which they are, fall short, then depending upon the severity of it, would require an investigation and to find out what happened with that order that caused that problem. And the reason for doing that, of course, is to see if you can't eliminate that or prevent that from happening the next time you have some similar situation. So this is a tool that you would use in your weekly production meeting. You would look at all the orders that were shipped for the previous week, and you would spot those that needed attention, and you'd assign those to somebody to follow up on. And this, I should mention that this is a measure of organization performance. This is not a measurement of management performance. This is a measure of the total system performance, the whole process performance. Did you make the budget? In other words, the estimate, and did you ship it on time? And the president's job or the owner's job or the CEO's job is to build an organization that can do that consistently, can consistently ship on time and can consistently bring orders in at or under the estimated cost. The next thing I want to show you is an insight. And this insight is it has to do with problem solving. And in our culture, when we think about problem solving, we think about problem elimination. A solved problem is one that no longer exists. So it's solved. However, there are certain kinds of problems in organizations and in life in general that you cannot solve by elimination. The best you can do is ameliorate them. And what I mean by ameliorate is have them happen less frequently, and when they do happen, have them be less disruptive or less costly. Okay. Now, when you approach a problem, and it's a problem that can only be minimized or ameliorated, and you're approaching it with a elimination mindset, let's say, you're going to fail because you're not going to be able to eliminate it. And a good example of a situation like this is rework in a job shop. Rework in a job shop comes with the territory, and no matter what you do, you're never going to completely eliminate it. Now, you can reduce it, and there are things that you can do to minimize it, but there's always going to be a factor, a problem, if you will, in the organization. And the reason for that is that you're making different things all the time. It's you have a make-to-order business, and you're making from abstractions, prints, descriptions, things like that, and you're converting that into some concrete end product. And your ability to do that every time is not perfect. You're not going to have a situation where you're not going to have to go back and do some rework on something over some amount of orders. So if you approach that rework problem with the idea that you're going to eliminate it, that's not going to work. So you have to look for ways to reduce it. I can give you an example. I was in a shop a while back, a machine shop, and the the uh, the machinists and the operators, they were older, as tends to be the case in the industry. And of course, their eyes were not as good as they used to be, and there were mistakes being made in terms of interpreting data from the print and converting that into machine settings and so on. So what management did was they issued everybody a magnifying glass, a good quality magnifying glass. And so if there was a question or something wasn't clear, put the magnifying glass on it, see if that doesn't help. Now, is that going to eliminate rework? Absolutely not. Is it going to reduce instances where there is misinterpretation of data or misinterpretation of machine settings? Absolutely. So that's a way to minimize it or to reduce it, um, but you're not going to eliminate it. Okay. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is another insight, and this has to do with uh, indirect labor. If you look at your income statement, you may find on there that there's a category or an entry called indirect labor. Now, it may not be present in smaller shops, but in larger shops tends to be there, and in mass production manufacturing, it's almost always there. And indirect labor is an accounting term. It's a way of distinguishing labor that's directly working on the product versus those that are not. Okay. So what happens when you call a resource group indirect labor, that tends to minimize it. It's like, wait a minute, it's indirect, so it's not producing, it's not making money for us. Maybe we ought to figure out a way to reduce it, and so on and so forth. So, indirect labor becomes a target for cost reduction. However, let's reframe it and let's call it what it really is, and call it by its right name, which is manufacturing support. That's what it is. And when you look at it that way, and you understand its purpose, its function, now you can work with it. Now it's not some abstraction on an income statement. It's a tangible way of going about it, saying how can we support manufacturing better. And we can get input from the guys. We can get input from the material people or the other indirect labor people in terms of what they're doing. There could be setup people. There could be people who move materials around. There's different types of indirect labor doing different tasks. But think about it as manufacturing support, and you'll be able to get a lot more value out of it than you will by calling it indirect labor. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is waste versus productivity. Back in the day, you used to hear a lot about increasing productivity. That was something that was, kind of like a management objective and so on. But you don't hear about increasing productivity too much these days. What you do hear is the elimination of waste. And we can thank Deming for that, and we can thank Taiichi Ohno, who's the originator of Lean, for that, because what they did was that they focused us on waste as opposed to productivity. And the reason that that's more effective, if you will, is that there's an inverse relationship between productivity and waste. And that inverse relationship is the less waste, the greater the productivity. Okay, automatic. So waste becomes a target for continuous improvement in an organization. And the reason for that is, excuse me, that it's tangible. Okay, it can be measured, it can be counted, it can be seen, it can be costed. Um, Waste is a tangible thing, whereas rework is something that exists in the future. We do certain things today, like train people or whatever, we expect productivity improvement in the future. But waste exists in the present, and attacking waste is a very effective way to improve productivity. Now, the next thing we want to take a look at is a type of waste, which is rework. And rework is something that I call the great Satan of waste. And the reason I call it that is because it's the most expensive form of waste in the shop. And here's why. First, you pay to make it wrong. Then you pay to undo what you made wrong. Then you pay again to redo what was undone. And maybe once and maybe more than once you have to do that. It depends. Okay? There may be scrap involved. You may have been able to save the material, or you might have had to scrap it, start all over again. And all of the time that you're undoing and redoing, you could have been producing saleable product. So what you've done is you've lost capacity and you've lost revenue as a result of that rework, which has now stopped production. And the other thing that happens, which is kind of, I call it a rubbernecking delay, is that when there's a problem on the floor, people have a tendency to drift over to find out what's going on, just natural curiosity, okay? And they may have some ideas about how to fix it or not, but they come over to find out what's what, and then they go back to their machine. So what you get from that is a slowdown in the shop, and it's just like cars on the highway. You go past an accident, you want to look and see what's going on, and of course everybody slows down. So rework is one of the metrics that is a way to measure production or manufacturing in the new organization that we saw in number 2, in part 2 of this video. Part 1 of the video, I should say, dealt with an invisible problem that every job shop has. Okay, and it's a matter of not being organized correctly. Let me put it that way. And so what part 1 does of this series is to expose that invisible problem so you can see it. Part 2 shows you how to solve it. You have to reconceptualize the job shop. You have to redesign the organization. You have to put in a management system that will allow you to manage across the entire process or control across the entire process. And so that's a piece of organization design work, and the fee for that is $1,400. And now part 3 is insights, tools, and techniques that you can use to manage more effectively. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is the need to turn RFQs around quickly. Okay, we had a project a while back at Hyde Manufacturing in Southbridge, Massachusetts. Great company, Hyde. And one of the things that we did was that we established a job shop business that was previously a department. So it was a department in a mass production business called Specials, and it didn't work very well at all. Could never get the cost right, could never ship on time. There were just a variety of problems. So in investigating this department, Department 36, I think it was called, what we determined was that it was a job shop, and that we carved that job shop out of that big organization and made it a standalone business. And that standalone business, we did this in 1990. And today, that business has morphed, or whatever you want to call it, into this, Hyde Industrial Blade Solutions. So it's a multi-million-dollar business that was carved out of a department. So during the course of this project, one of the people on the team asked, "I wonder how long it takes for us to know when we win an order. How long does that take from when we sent out the quote or the bid?" Okay. So it was kind of an interesting question, and we had the data, so we went back and assembled the data and interpreted it, and it came out in a graph that looks like this. And what you can see here is that half of the orders that were won came in within 5 days of sending out the bid or the quote, whatever you want to call it. That was amazing. We thought we were going to get a bell curve, and we got something like this. It was very, very different. So curiosity caused the guy that had the question. He called up some customers that had responded quickly. And he asked them, he said, we were surprised at how quickly we got your order. He said, well, don't you wait till you get like 2 or 3 orders in and compare them for price and delivery and all of that? And people would tell him, say, yeah, we try to do that. But sometimes we're up against a time constraint ourselves. And so what we need is whatever it is that you provide, we need it quickly. So if you turn your RFQ around quickly and you get on my desk first, okay, that's going to get attention. And if you've got a decent lead time within our parameters of what we would expect, you'll get the order. And we're not going to wait for other orders to come in. For what? To save a couple of bucks? Doesn't make any sense. So in these kinds of cases, half of the time, oh, by the way, time is more important than money. So take a look at that process in your organization, that quoting process, and figure out how to make that work faster. Lots of ways to do that. It's not part of this video, but you certainly can find ways to make the quoting function more responsive to customers. Okay, well that's all I've got for today, and let me leave you with some contact information. First of all, if you've watched part 1, the uncovering of the hidden problem that plagues all job shops, and you're uncertain about should you buy part 2 or does part 2 have any bearing on your shop, if you're unsure about that, give me a call and we'll talk about it, and I'll explain it as best I can in the context of your business. And there's no charge for that, and there's certainly no obligation. It's just a conversation to see if, in fact, this is a way for you to improve the performance of your shop. And I think you'll find that it is, and that it's a minimal investment for a very powerful solution to that hidden problem. The next thing you could do is you could send me an email. It's my name, Vincent.Bizone@gmail.com. And, send an email. And the other thing you could do is you could go and visit the JobShopKnowledgeStore.com. And what you'll find in there is all kinds of reasonably priced insights, concepts, and tools similar to the ones that you've seen in this video. So if you're interested in learning more about these kinds of tools and techniques and so on, I suggest you go over there and browse through it and see if there's anything you like. Okay, this is Vincent Bizone. Thank you for watching. Until next time.